Okay, so let's do the Florida DrupalCamp website to get started on.
Okay, and for the DrupalCamp website, just so we can show the people here is, um, yeah, if you can take them there, that'd be great.
So if you ever been to the camp in Florida, this is kind of like what you will expect from a user when you're going there and then seeing the different sessions. And because it just recently happened, you have all the information. It's important to note that depending on the time of the year and whether the camp, it's over or it's been over for a while, sometimes this is empty and they take some stuff off. But right now, this is like the best point to get started with the Florida side just because they just finished their sessions.
Yeah, so can you point out some of the interesting things on this site? Like, I really like this site. Of all the campsites, I think this site looks like $1 million. So can you point out some of the things that really stand out to you and things that you like about the site?
Sure. Uh, So, because Mike Herschel is the main maintainer of this site, he usually tries to make sure every couple of years, I think it's been maybe 2, 3 years, he does a refresh of the site and he changes the look and he plays with different features. Like you can see here when you scroll down, there's an animation on CSS that follows you down and it has that nice and appealing effect. Among other features, if you are a speaker and you are going to present at this conference, they have a really nice agenda that kind of like highlights everything in one page. Well, it's technically 3 pages, but if you were to go in here, you have all the information kind of at your fingertips. And during the camp, he enables an extra module that usually just scrolls you down. Um,
Yeah,
so
I remember it just scrolls you down to the right hour and the day that you're on. So it flips to the day that you're on automatically, and it flips to the time that you're on at that time. So you don't even have to scroll around. It takes you down directly to that time, and then you can see the sessions that are going on at that time, right?
And that is correct. And that is something that you only get from like Sessionize and some of the paid products that usually tend to scroll you down to the section. So that's not really nice add-on. Although I
Yeah.
think it's a little experimental and he hasn't fully rolled it out just because there's a few bugs that sometimes happen when you go and, the event is about to be over when you go too far down the page. But for
Yeah.
the most part, it works as expected.
Yeah, and let me ask you this. The original site that we're looking at right now, this is Drupal 10, right?
This is Drupal 10, that's correct. And we
Yeah.
can
And
double
then
that here. Hmm.
And then what you have done on DrupalForge is you have updated that to Drupal 11, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
So, because Mike made the repo for Florida, let me see if I can find it quickly. And this is the one for the blog, but I think he might have a link here to his GitHub. Yep. Since he's made this theme available, I think, ever since the beginning, and he has had different iterations. The last one was more of a pale blue or baby blue color, and now
Hmm.
we tried to go for a high contrast theme. So, if you never submitted a session for a camp, you definitely should, because different camps have different experiences. Some of them let you log in after you submit a session, and then you can edit the node where um, your session was. Like with Florida and a couple of other camps, you can log in and then you can go only into the page that you made, but you can go into this page and change facts after the fact. Like if you want to add the video to your thing or if you want to add the slides, you can do it yourself. Some camps don't let you do anything because you just submit a web form and they let you know whether that was approved or not. So
So
this
the presenter can actually go in there and make edits to their own content.
that is correct. That is
That's
correct.
great. Okay.
And he emails you automatically when you submit a session, and he also emails you right away when you are accepted for a session. Now that, even with the demo that we're gonna see today, because we don't have SendGrid a key in there, it's not gonna do it out of the box. You still have to add the SendGrid key. But outside of that, everything is in there for you to potentially have all of the behaviors that the camp has. So if you never
Yeah,
submitted a session, it's probably better to submit a session just to see a little bit of that workflow from that perspective. But all of that is packaged on the demo.
yeah. I like that at the top it says the track, the beginner track, the the room number, um, I guess the beginner, and then it tells you the date and time of it. Oh, it tells you about the trainer, where they're
It does tell you
from,
about the trainer.
and
And
their all their contact links at the bottom, their picture. This is great.
And I should highlight that not all themes do this. Like this one even have a user page for it. Some of them don't necessarily emphasize the person themselves as much, but this one does. And I don't know why necessarily is doing this weird thing with the index.php. That might be something we have to check with them because that's not traditional. But like being able to have this here and have it supported from the template out of the box saves people time and energy when it comes
Yeah,
to developing their camps, and especially if you are a speaker who comes around and keeps going to different ones.
yeah. Now, can you click on one of the sponsor logos?
Mm-hmm.
And okay, so it takes you directly to the sponsor site.
It
But there's a page there as well, right? Like, where all the sponsors are.
Yep, there is an all sponsors page, and then this page kind of like highlights the different sponsors.
So
This is
there's no separate page for each of the sponsors. When you just click on their logo, it just takes you to their website.
um good question. I don't know that there is a way of getting to that. We could probably look
Yeah,
when
it's
we're
fine.
looking at the demo.
Yeah.
But I think there's more information that can be put on the sponsors because I've seen these fields kind of like the description. So if you wanted to
Mhm.
have a sessions page, I don't think it'd be too hard to extend it because it'd just be an extra internal page. They
Right,
just
right. Yeah,
happen to not highlight that.
yeah. Can we take a look at the menus at the top? See what
Sure.
menus are? So you've got the training schedule, you've got the speaker info, contrib day, and location. Can we take a look at each of those pages real quick, please?
Let's take a look. So the sessions, we're
We looked
ready.
at already. Yep.
Let's look at the training one is just a link to the first day in the schedule, wherever you have the training happening. So if you have it at the end or at the beginning, it's just a matter
Got
of
it.
changing the order of the link.
Okay.
The speaker info is an internal page that they have, and this internal page just highlights a little bit of the information and some of the things that you might want to know. The contrib day is also an internal page. There's quite a few of those that are internal pages. And then it just has a little bit of a contact at the bottom. And then you have more general pages that don't ever change. Like this doesn't really change with the theme. They just keep supporting it, like where the camp is, similar to like about Florida, the code of conduct, inclusion. All of these pages are technically internal pages that highlight a little bit of information, have a basic image. Some of them don't, but some of them do, and a little bit of text, and sometimes something after if needed.
Right.
And then you just have the FAQs, which every camp has, and they implement it in a couple of different ways. This one doesn't really have an accordion for the FAQs, and that may not be a bad thing because sometimes there's a bunch of accessibility challenges when it comes to an accordion and whether you do it in JavaScript or CSS. Then they have a cover policy, which might not be needed anymore, but it was one of those legacy things left in there, and a contact page. So that is it from this side without being
And
locked.
then if you click on register now, what happens?
So if you click on register now, it takes you to their Eventbrite site.
Okay.
Some camps use Eventbrite, some of them use something else called Tito, some use a different protocol together. It's whatever you want to have handle the money and the sales, because that's another set of constraints that sometimes camps don't want to have to deal with, because PCI
Right, right,
compliance and whatnot.
right, right. All right. So let's scroll down a little bit. And okay, so what's this 150, 30, 75?
So this here is like a highlights block.
Okay, got it.
And that, to change it, as we will see later, as of right now, it's just a tweak file. So you can change it as a tweak file, but it's kind of hard coded into the template. So at some point, it might be nice to have it as a regular file that you can easily change on whenever some sort of configuration, maybe a custom block. But right now, that comes in from tweak.
Okay.
And then we have our feature speakers section, which every cam has feature speakers with a couple of nice highlights. And those take you to the feature speakers page, but they don't have to. I mean, you could just let it stay there and then just have it as a regular card.
Right, got it. Okay,
And
and Martin was the one that wrote the events platform uh, module, right? And that you've
that's
integrated into another version of this Florida theme. Is that right?
That is correct. Martin here is the lead on the events platform development, I guess you could call it, because I don't know that he's the main person for the whole thing, but I think he's the lead behind all of those nice features. And those features are not seen from the front end, except for in a few exceptions, but for the most part, they come into play when you are trying to move stuff around in the schedule or doing a couple of other advanced features, like maybe setting the camp for next year, which requires more steps if you don't use it.
Yeah. So we could probably look at that in another video, but that video can probably build on this video because you could probably just show that piece of how that's different from this
Yeah.
event. Okay, so let's go back to DrupalForge and see what people can actually do over here. So
Okay.
in DrupalForge, you can come over here, you can click on it from here, or better yet, let's go inside this card, the Florida DrupalCamp card.
Mm-hmm.
And then so you're in the Florida DrupalCamp website. I know there's nothing here, so we're going to fill this out. That's why we're doing the video now.
Yeah.
But so you want to make sure that you're looking at the Florida DrupalCamp website, and then you can do the express launch from here.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go do that express launch.
Let's do it.
Oh, okay, cool. We have when we don't have capacity, this thing takes about 2 minutes, but when we do have capacity, it'll take 3 seconds. So okay, great. So now you have the application URL and you've got the login information here. You've got the password to log in. So you've got all this information here. And then we also have the cloud dev environment. Can you toggle that just real quick?
Sure.
Okay, so just so everyone on the recording can see this, if you need VS Code in a browser, you want to get into the code, you can do this with the Cloud Dev environment. If you just want to do site building, you can keep this off. You don't need VS Code, you can just do site building. You have this environment for 6 hours for free.
So I just click on the first link just to showcase a little bit of all of them. So here we are. So now we are on the Drupal side.
Oh, this one even has a video on here. Look at that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the video came as part of the assets of the recipe, so that was kind of nice. There's two ways to log in. If you use Drupal before, you know you can just hit user dash login and it will take you there. And then you can use the credentials that you already have, the credentials that are found here, dev panel and dev panel, and then that will let you in. Or you could click this other URL, which I guess takes you to the same page. So let's type that in. There we go. So now we're in. You might notice this has a couple of extra things like this toolbar right here. If you've never seen that before, that's actually the new core navigation that's coming in that's based out of the Gene toolbar. So it's not the Gene toolbar, although I think it's built on top of the Gene toolbar. Some things are. So if you're not familiar with that, that's just Drupal core and an experimental feature at that, which looks nice and has a couple of different niceties. But let's go and take a look at the content. Because first you probably are wondering, well, I saw that homepage. Let me see where that is at. There's a couple of different ways you could look at that. Sometimes, depending on what project we're on, people just call the homepage homepage. And in this one they did. So if we click on that, we can see what fields are available to us and what we can change on it. And we can see on this one, they don't really have anything. So you can wonder, oh, well, what happened there? Where is the actual homepage? For some of them, it's actually part of the tweak template themselves, but sometimes they just happen to set up a different node for it. So one way to do it is you go into structure, into configuration, and then inside of here you have the system basic site settings. And basic site settings will tell you what node ID they're using for their homepage. And so this is a way to kind of find your way backwards into like, oh, what is actually setting up the homepage. So if you were to put that in the URL, and because we're already logged in, by the way, there's also a couple of other site settings in here. So if you are trying to use this site for something else, you probably want to change the site name, the slogan, the email, and then just make sure that there's nothing that um, is unique to yours. So if I type that node, it takes us to the homepage. So now we know it's on this one. And then if we look for that little pencil, then usually we can just edit at this page. Where did that little pencil go? 137. Oh, so this is the page. So some of the items on the front end are getting hard-coded probably at the Twig template level. So some of those changes will have to be done in Twig to have some of the stuff in the front end refactor. Now, inside of here, we can see some of the other content that we may want to change, like the internal pages. So we can look at the different content tabs that they have. Let's look at sessions, for example. If I submitted a session as somebody who is an admin, I'm gonna be able to see all the different submissions and all the things should show up down here. And then from within the session that people submitted, because there's a form for them to submit the session, then you have access to a couple of settings. One of those is whether this is a training or it's not, because if it is a training, you want to know that, and then you want to highlight that sometimes a little differently. Whether this is a session or not a session and not a training, what that means is sometimes you have something like the lining sessions or breakfast or something like that. Sometimes you want to highlight those as not a session and not a training so they don't occupy those slots. And then you have like the description, who the audience is, the different categories, and then the speakers. And this is kind of where you will add yourself in. Now, if you were submitted the session, you're automatically added as a speaker when you fill in that web form. And then towards the bottom, you have like the social media for it. And then this here, this is where the events platform makes it different because in this version of it, you kind of have to select the time, and this comes from a taxonomy. And we can take a look at that taxonomy. And that takes a little bit to set up because you're just setting it up manually. So you have to delete all the days and add all the times again, and then you kind of like manually put it together. And then the room. These two are actually significantly improving the events platform, making it way easier and way faster to assign the time slots and the rooms to any given session. Then you have the slides. This field will be available to you when you actually, if you submit a session and they accept your session, then you can go back and edit your own node and then you can upload your own slides for this. You won't have access to all the stuff because you will be just a session submitter, or I forgot what the role for that is, but you will have access to that information. What else should we look at? So you might be wondering, well, what about some of the other details about the camp? So some of the other stuff for like the front end comes from actually this page. This is using a contributed module. And I am forgetting what the name of the module itself is, but the event platform also uses that, and it lets you create configuration pages. And these configuration pages are meant to replace some of the global values. So I'm gonna call this Salim Drupal Camp, and let's make it 2026, and let's change the location to Miami. And then you could even play with the start and end dates. Let's move it over to something that's easy to tell, maybe all the way down there in June. We're gonna make it the 19th, make it a whole week, and then switch this to the next year. And then this is actually, so you remember, I guess since I have it here, you remember this block right here that says register now. This is actually coming from this field. So if you wanted to change it to whatever else you want, the front page is actually reading the configuration from here. Some CAM websites actually read it from a node. Florida and the event platform actually read it from the configuration pages because it's easier to retrieve the values and keep it consistent. And why not? And you don't necessarily need to keep the history per se, although for some CAMs that might be important. And then you have a couple of different things on the homepage description. So this is a lot of the information you will see in the main page. So if we save this and then we go back to the site on a new tab, and we can see it says Miami, Florida. Some of the things change, the dates change. Um, the main title there. Wonder if we need to bust the cache for that one. We might need to, so we might need to go into the dev environment for that one. But a lot of the different things have already changed. Now, down here at the bottom, you can see the copyright. This is actually a block, a custom block, and I will show you that in a second. But that is just text coming from a custom block. So this doesn't really get auto-updated, and that's one reason why the Florida DrupalCamp website doesn't really have the date on it, because it's something that you just set on text and it's just added into the template. When you add the event platform, the event platform actually checks this page for the year, and it actually grabs this value and brings it down automatically. So that's something else you don't have to worry about if you're using the other one, because that's taken into consideration already. Let's see what other things to highlight. So let's go to blocks. So the custom blocks or inline blocks in Drupal are a way for you to have something that you can inject into a page or that you can use with Layout Builder, and why not? What's basically being used here for on this side is basically for that footer text that we saw over there, the hosting for DrupalForge and the copyright. And then on the schedule pages, there's a little bit of information that goes on top, like day number one has some information, and we can see that over here. So this information here is actually coming from that custom block that we have here. So changing that here should change, depending on what day we are, the information that is in here. Now,
Right.
it doesn't change the information below here because this is coming from a Drupal view, and the view loads the block and then it loads the rest of the information depending on, like, which categories you selected and which items are chosen. Any questions so far?
No, this looks great, man. There's a lot of work that went into this thing.
There is a lot of work for sure. And then if you wanted to like organize the sidebar for the sponsors, you could go in here and then just select how many items to display. You can see some of the things that are already selected in there for how to filter them. It's not styled in here, but this is what loads on all the sidebars for all the internal pages. Now that's a slightly different view that if you were to load the main sponsors view, or the job listings, or the session list, and why not? And if you see here, there's a session schedule view that has the 3 different days, which are 3 different blocks. That changes on the event platform as well. That doesn't really have like three different blocks in here. It handles that through a custom module. So it just, well, I probably can show that later, but it just has kind of like a little bit of flexibility added to that. Although you could argue there's nothing wrong with doing it this way. It's just a slightly different take on that. So this is kind of like how day one gets selected. You have like the path for the day one, if you wanted to call it whatever else. And then a little bit of like the taxonomy on like when you want to make the call for day one, because you probably want to make sure that it's 0 to midnight or 0 to whatever, 6 o'clock. Um, and then the other item that's left in here is like the taxonomy. So if you look, these are the categories we were looking at. um, for like tracking which section you want to showcase. Then we have like the different rooms, and then we have the times allotted. Now this here is a little bit of a trick to update every year, and this is something that the events platform makes it easier, and we probably see that next, probably in a little bit, because if I am going to change the date, I have to manually go in here and replace this, which will take me a little bit of time. It's quite a bit of site building to like fudge around, like changing the month, the day, and then the time for each one of those. And remember to not mix up any of this because all of these are used. And for Florida, sometimes maybe their dates are about the same, but like at least when we did it for Chattanooga, that took a hot minute. And I think it was me doing it. So I remember that being a little bit of like, ooh, that takes a while. So yeah, so there's that. There's a couple of media files, but I think for the most part, it's just a basic media. If you went to the content types, you can see that the content types that the Florida site has is the feature speaker, jobs listing, mini session, session, and sponsor. Basic
Did
page is
we wait? Did we look at those content types like job listings and mini sessions?
Um, so mini sessions is not currently being used and it's not part of the event platform because I asked Mike and that was something that they were trying to do like a lining session type of thing for sessions, but it never really took off and they
Yeah.
didn't really get a lot of submissions for that. So it's more of a legacy type item that's still in there and it's kind of style that could be used for any camp that they wanted to use. It's also not part of the event platform because of the same reason, because I don't know that they found enough reason to migrate that as of yet. And the job listings is part of it, but I don't know that as many people use it, or maybe many people are aware that that is part of that. It's better highlighted on the event platform when we see that, but I don't know that the Drupal site has an active one over here in the toolbar or anywhere for it to be
Yeah, I
visible.
didn't see it. Is it in the footer? Can you scroll down and see if it's in the footer?
Let's take a look. Oh, there is a link to job listings. And I guess there's this one from Acquia. But I don't know how long this has been here, which, is good and bad, I guess. But
Yeah. Yeah.
so there's that. And then kind of that takes you here. Yeah, pretty much it for that.
Yeah.
So the event platform actually, so what the event platform does is that it bundles some of these content types into modules and it adds extra features to them. So feature speakers, job listings, sessions, and sponsors also come in out of the box from the event platform. So if you were to install a Drupal site just with Oliver or whatever the heck you are using as the underground system, you will have those content types out of the box if you install the event platform. Whereas here they come from configuration, which is fine. Um, but that's something to be aware of. Now, if you look at the basic page, the only thing that's unique and different is that they are using the fill image, which comes out of the standard Drupal profile. And that's just to like have if people want to add an image that is highlighted like they did on this one here, the after party. Like this will be like a field image just to make it bigger and kind of like outside the box and make sure that it's all the way to the top. So that's a little bit about the Florida DrupalCamp website.
And the way you built it is you took the repo and then you pulled in the content. How'd you pull in the content?
So the way I pulled in, so originally to get the content, you kind of have to have access to the database. But a database is not a great thing to just keep around because there are safety considerations on that. So what I did is Drupal now has Drupal recipes, which is a way of exporting the content of a database, of an active database, into YAML files. And when you export some of that stuff, like the passwords and a bunch of other stuff that might be sensitive, doesn't really go out. The most you can get is probably like email addresses from people, users. So I did that. So I exported a default content recipe. And then from that, I went in and altered all the users' passwords. I mean, not password, email addresses, because you can see those. And then just make sure you add a silly email address to that, just so they don't get bombarded if it ever gets discovered that it's in a GitHub repo. And sometimes change some of their names, so why not if needed. And then from that, then you can apply a recipe to a brand new site. Because if you were to go to the GitHub repo we looked at earlier that Mike has, and you install it because he has detail on it, it'd be a blank site. You wouldn't really have any information. But the moment you apply the recipe, all that information flows through the different content types, the blogs, the images, everything gets populated. And then now you have something complete that you can reverse engineer and play with.
Yeah. But that's how you built it. But on DrupalForge, you just have to clone the site and then you get it.
And that is correct. On
Yeah. Okay.
DrupalForge, you just have to clone it. And then if you went here to the VS Code environment, which we can take a quick look, some of the items. Oh, let me copy that password. Some of the items I used to build it are in there still. So if you wanted to take a look at what it was required to make that recipe, or if you wanted to change some of the values, because sometimes, at least I found that recipes are like an easy way to migrate a site that's not too large. The migrate API, I think, is still relevant and important, but recipes, especially default content, allows you to export and import information. So for sites that are probably not in the hundreds and that don't have like super complex fields, it makes sense to just do a kind of like a data dump, but a safer data dump, and then bring it back in. So if we went in here, you have DDEV if you wanted to bring it for local, as a local environment in case there's some issues or it's slowing down or why not. And then if you look into the recipes folder, I don't use the top one. Drupal 11 builds a top one. Not necessarily sure why, but I usually put my recipes under the web folder. And then if you look into the web folder, there's a Florida DrupalCamp 25 folder, and that has the different YAML files divided by the configuration entities. So like you have the entity that's called the blog content, that if you look inside of it, if you remember, this is the hosting by DrupalForge that we saw a little earlier and why not. Um, this is what actually goes into that field and makes that block happen in the front end, and a couple of others. The config pages is that page that we were looking at a second ago that has like the dates and why not. So this is way easier to sometimes modify if you are migrating a page or if you're just changing some files, and then the different nodes in there. So if you wanted to go and tweak this, you can. You're welcome to. And then in the README, I put in the script that you need to run inside of the web directory. I don't know if on this one I didn't include that, but if you run it, you just have to make sure you cd inside a web, because when you do, let's do this, new terminal. So usually, um, hmm. A Drupal pod will put you in the www directory, and the www directory is the web root right outside of the web folder. But to run this command, you can either modify or just make sure that you are running it within this folder. Because if you run it within this folder, then it will find this path to the core scripts Drupal and then imports the stuff. So even if you like messed up the site, let's say you went in there and you play with a bunch of content or you deleted all of it and then you deleted something you wanted back and you're like, if I could only get back to what, I had when I got started with the thing. You could reapply the recipe and the recipe will override the stuff that you change. And here we are. So if we do a ls, you can see the different folders. You see the into web. And then if I went in here and I just type that, whoops. As soon as I hit enter here, it will execute that recipe and wipe some of the changes that I had over there. Although, I'm not sure since I already did it once if it will work again. Sometimes you have to make sure that you drop the database first and you do a clean install for it to apply because recipes are not necessarily meant to override each other. But that's kind of how I did it. So that tends to work with any database because I did notice that DrupalForge uses MySQL, and at least locally with DDEP, I sometimes use MariaDB. And it used to do work. Used to be that those two were compatible, and you could just swap databases. But as of late, they have a lot of conflicts. So recipes is a nice way to go between database types.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit of that. Any other questions?
No, this looks good. So what else would they do on the command line? Is there anything else that they want to that
Okay.
you might want to do on the command line?
So something else you may want to do in the command line is if, like, let's say, for example, you are on the site. Uh, what is that? Let's say that you are. Oh, I'm not sure what the site died. Let me go here and maybe do a drush CR. I might be having some lag since I'm also sharing the screen.
Or the container might be too small. So you might want to talk to the developers and have them increase the size of the container. Depending on the size of the site, sometimes you have to modify the size of the container that it's running in. It might be running in a really small container. I don't know.
Which, is fine if you are just doing it here. Usually the challenge, if they could check that box, that's where you get into critical issues because it requires significantly more resources. Um, so the main thing I was going to highlight here is if you went into the site and you turn debugging on, because we have the full theme, you could go in here and then you could look into the custom folder and the different templates that are in here. And then you could look for the template that does this section right here and then just change that.
Mm,
At some
mm,
point, you probably want to change that as well. And you're wondering, oh, where the heck is that? You could also just do a search and then you see this site stats template and then just change it here. And this could come from
yeah,
any place on your site. You could have like a custom block, but some items are hard coded just because of the ease of it. But this doesn't stop you from having access to improving it, using it, and sharing it some more. And I think that's it. I don't know that there is anything else because some of the other stuff they use ECA to send the emails, and that's harder to demo because to do a full demo, we will have to probably have one that's fully set up, or somebody has to use the one that's in production so they actually get the emails and see the different links and modify some of those things. Um, but if I was to add something else is take a look into the images and sometimes mostly in the images, but then sometimes like some of the random icons like this favicon, it is what loads this little icon in here if you can see it on the top. That's something that
mm,
people forget to change sometimes when you use a template and then you're like, how do I get it to look like mine? Why does it keeps loading something with Drupal with Florida? And that's basically it. If you replace that
mm,
favicon with something else, and that's always 100 by 100 something. I forgot if it's
right.
pixels or something else, but 100 by 100.
Pixels, yeah.
And then, yeah, pretty much it.
Cool. How long did it take you to create this template and upgrade to Drupal 11?
So to create a template, Um, it took me maybe a couple of days, but I actually did that over Christmas break because I was doing a session in Florida about the fact that in WordPress you can get started with a site with default content forever. You have been able to do that forever. You just buy the theme, and the theme brings something in there that you just tell WordPress to suck in, and then you have something like this, and then you just poke around, turn stuff off, and then you move on with your day. Whereas in Drupal, we never had this before, so I thought, oh, let me go and find some repos that look nice, that have nice themes, and that I have access to maybe some of the information, and try to generate some of the data out of that. Because I know they don't necessarily mind. It's extra visibility that they get for all their hard work. And, it can make it so in the future that can lower the learning curve. Because Drupal has a steep learning curve, but I think part of that is because, there's plenty of open repos. There's just not a centralized way of playing with them.
So that
How
was
many
that was
times?
that. We were gonna try and cover that in 15 minutes. It it took us an hour.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know there were a lot of interesting parts to cover, and I know I hadn't really showed you this before, so it was probably all new as well. You were looking at it as somebody who is exploring the site, which is fantastic because you already imagine how long they're gonna take to like poke around and before
Right.
they give up or move on to something else.
No, I think it was good to cover all those aspects of it because a lot of times people will come into it and they won't know what all a site can do. And then not just what all a site can do, but how do you configure the site? And then if you have, since you have access to VS Code, if you want to get into the code, what else can you do at the code level, or what would you want to do at the code level? So I think you hit all the different aspects of it, and then we also covered the different use cases for for this site. So thank you for doing all of it.
For
Um,
sure.
I honestly didn't think it would take us that long, but I'm glad we did a comprehensive coverage of this. So thank you.
Well, if you want, I feel like it won't take us too long to talk about the event platform one since it's based
Yeah,
on.
you wanna do that right now?
Sure, we can do that one right now and then
Yeah,
leave
I
the
know
other
I
one
know
for
we've
later.
reached the top of the hour, so but if you still have time, let's do it.
Yeah, I mean, I can do that one. I mean, the other two, I mean, Midcam is a slightly older template, so I can showcase some of those
No,
things.
no, let's do that later. But
Hmm.
okay, so let me set the background for the event platform. So we Bernardo set up the Florida DrupalCamp site, and then we publicized it on Slack. And then Martin said, "Hey, it would be great to have the events platform built into that." And so Bernardo took that as a challenge, and actually went through and built the events platform into actually integrated the events platform into that site. So now you have the best of both worlds. The events platform, there's a committee there's a team of folks that's been working on specking that out, and Martin's been the lead developer on it. There's been a lot of contributors on it as well, but Martin's been the lead developer on it. And it is just fantastic. I've seen a demo of it, and it'll blow you away. So I don't know, Bernardo, I don't know how much of it you were able to integrate it, because it is a big product. It is not a small project. It is a big project. So let's dive into it and see how much of it has been integrated. And
Let's do it.
and I'll be surprised as well. I haven't seen this before. So let's go take a look.
Yeah, especially since you saw the other one, and hopefully the other one stays alive, so we can do a little bit of a this is the one with the event platform. If you look at it, you couldn't tell it's there because it's just using the theme for Florida. So it looks very similar, but it's not what Florida is using at the moment. Florida is using a version that inspired the events platform, but because it inspired it, it makes it challenging for them to adopt something that came after them. Um, But right now we can take a look at some of those things, which I'm sure sometimes the Florida team has missed out on seeing because they have it already, but in a different flavor, and they can see some of the trade-offs and maybe some of the things they could gain from it. Although it will require for them to at least rebuild their site a little bit, not their theme, but like rebuild some of the things. So let me go ahead and log in because this one, the events platform is all about the user experience. It's all about you setting up your camp, making sure it's easy for you next year to set it up again and again and again whenever you need it. So you won't see much on the front end, um, but when you log in, let's take a look. So let's go to content. And now that we're here, let's go to the events details section. Now this has a drop down. The other one doesn't have a drop down. These settings right here, these are all things that Martin and I imagine other contributors have added to the events platform, unique to itself. So let's take a look at some of those. So let's take a look at the session schedule because that's kind of like one of the best products in my opinion. So let's go into the settings. So if you look into the settings, there's a couple of things for like what items you want to be able to add in there and like what workflow state you want to have them. Because with the events platform, they're taking advantage of a session. When you submit a session, your session is proposed. You don't want to schedule a session that is still in the proposed phase, so somebody has to click accept or send the accepted, add the accepted category for it to send the email and make it available for themselves or somebody else to then go and schedule the session. And then a couple of different filters you can make it. So this is just kind of nice to have out of the box. But let's take a look at the scheduler itself. Schedule sessions. So this is unique to the events platform.
Wait, I want to ask you one other thing. So right now, what you did when you installed this, you ported everything that was on the Florida DrupalCamp site into the events platform so that people can see it as a demo.
So what I did is I reused a lot of the content that I had already on that recipe for Florida. Make sure that the configuration was compatible because I'm gonna show you the events platform doesn't include everything that the Florida has. Like it doesn't deal with the user pages. That when we went to Florida, um, something that you might have liked is that if you click here, you had a little bit of, information about Martin, where he lives, so his title. This stuff is not part of the events platform. This is something that you either have to, as of the moment, add on your own to every people content type, or at least to the list of content types, so every person has those fields or find a different solution for that. So Florida comes with that because they have they added those extra fields in here. So let me I think it might be this one. So if I go into people. You can see that there's a couple of fields down here that are unique, and these are fields that were customized just like you do a content type by just adding those in there, like the first name of the person, the last name, the picture if you need it. The biography, I think either Drupal already brings it or they just moved it around. The hometown, the title. This is not out of the box Drupal. That's something that Florida added on theirs. And we have an issue with the events platform to potentially add it to it. But I didn't want to necessarily add something that the events platform don't bring out of the box and then kind of fool people into thinking that that came with it because it technically doesn't. So if you were to look at the one that we have with the events platform, and then you look at people, and I made some dummy users, you have the display name and you have the bio, and that's about it. That's kind of like straight up Drupal core when it comes to that. So it doesn't have a Drupal.org feel or anything like that. So that's something that Florida does that's kind of still unique. And I talked to Martin about this, something that it could be nice to have either as part of that or something that people should take into account if you're building your own site. Know that you can explore what Drupal has for that, I mean, Florida has for that, and then just bring those fields over or just add the fields yourself, but that's not addressed on the events platform itself. But session schedules. So if you saw in the Florida one, if we were to schedule a session, the way that will work is, and this is the Florida one, just so we don't keep confusing them. If we go to content, and then I'm gonna go into the Sunday lunch, what you do is you edit that one. And then down here, you select a time slot and the room. And this is kind of like what is used by the Drupal views to put it on the right location and also by the thumbnail and the different displays like the node that we saw a second ago. On the one for that has the event platform, he added this nice I don't even know if this is jQuery, but like a nice drag and drop thing that, let's say, usually a session, once it's accepted, it will show up here. And I actually have a session that we can probably do because I left one of those as, I think it might be this one. Let's go to edit. I left one of those in the proposed state, so I wouldn't really assign it because there's not a really easy way. So this one is accepted. Let's go back. Maybe, oh, this one here. So there's 4 sessions, and that's because, I didn't really feel like adding more for a demo. But if we go down here on this one is proposed. So when it's proposed, it doesn't show on that little calendar thing that we were looking at a second ago. But let's switch that over to accepted. That should trigger that email that goes to that person and it tells them your camp session has been accepted. And here's the link to your node that you can edit and add more information about it and why not. Once that loads, we can go back into the schedule and then
So I just want to clarify something. You accepted it, but you didn't give it a time slot or a room yet.
I did not, because on the events platform, you can do it here, but you don't have to do it here because you can do it visually on that drag and drop thing, and I will show that in a second. It makes the world of difference when you're doing multiple sessions and you have like 30 different sections that you have to try to allocate in different time spaces and different rooms, and you're trying to make sure that you don't have scheduling conflicts or you don't have 2 sessions that are very similar
Yeah,
or that or one session that could crush the other one right next to it because there's
yeah,
different speakers and different tracks and why not.
yeah. I've seen him drag and drop things. So that's probably what you're going to show right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah, it's probably taking a long time to load because it's probably a little.
Well, at the moment it's just saving this node.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, Bernardo, you might want to contact the developers and have them increase the size of the container for these things.
Um, let's see if that actually took, because if it didn't, oh, it might actually have done it. It just was spinning around for a while. Okay, so let's go back in here. Um, and let me go to the scheduler. And I feel like there's a way of just clicking the scheduler right here, but for whatever reason, it's not letting me, but it's usually this path. So I go back in here, and now you see that session shows up here in the on the corner.
Oh, how interesting. Yeah.
And that the only reason why it shows up in there, I believe, is because it doesn't have a time of a room. So I feel like if you went to any of these other sessions and you unselected the time of a room, which I don't know if it's
Could you
mandatory,
drag it out back into the session?
yeah, you can drag it out. So I can drag it out into the page, and I can select different slots in the page itself.
And then could you pull it out back into the sessions column on the, yeah?
I guess
Right.
now you can with that on a sign on top. I had never really seen that before. Well, that's cool. For the
Oh, look at
time, I
that.
thought, oh, I guess I'm stuck once I move it into an assignment. But yeah, no, that's cool.
It's great.
Yeah. I don't know why this session is not letting me have another concurrent one in the same room, but that might
Well,
be.
this is a good recording because then we can share this with Martin as well.
Yeah.
Because it might be, I don't know if it maybe this is a feature, this is a bug or whatever it is, but this will be good that I think you and I are doing it, and I think we should do this with Martin as well. So that way, he can actually show us, like, you guys did it wrong. This is the way it's supposed to be, or whatever it is, right?
Right. But so the biggest time saver here is that, right? But the other thing I really like is like the next year around when you come back to it and
Oh,
then you
this
have
is
to change
awesome,
it.
dude.
Yeah, and you have to change the date, then you pick the dates. And then after you pick the dates, you select the times here because you want to have like starting at 9 a.m. or starting at 10 a.m. and you can tell it replace. That is crazy just because this takes forever. If you saw the Florida one, you have to do it taxonomy by taxonomy, day
Yeah.
by day. That is a nightmare. But if you do it here, it will generate, and this might take a minute. There we go. And then if we go back
Just
all the way
generates all those time slots for you. Oh, that's
and
great.
then everything is on a sign and it's ready to go. And then if you made a mistake, I made a mistake with the Chattanooga one. It took me a while to figure out. I put the wrong day, and then I was like, I was having to flip between um this page right here and the actual page in production over here, the session schedule, to keep looking back and forward to see if I actually got the thing on the right slot, which is a little bit of a nightmare if you're doing 20 or 30 or more sessions, because then you go back and forward and which day did I put it on? Did I mix down my taxonomy down here? But you don't have to deal with this anymore. And that's just a nicety out of the box. And then now you can.
Oh, that's great.
So that's part of the events platform. But what's also part of the events platform is if we go into the events details, let me go back to the site, this one here. Then this is what was called cam details on the other one. Like these fields are being used for more than just one thing. These fields are actually being used by the block on the footer. So let's see if in this one it actually changes. Say Tampa, leave it there. Back to the site. Oh, so there's Tampa right here. And then if we go all the way to the bottom, you can see that this has, maybe it does need a drush refresh. But this is actually automatically grabbed from that. I actually did grab Salim Drupal.
It did do it. Yeah.
So I thought I changed the year. Maybe I changed it on the wrong field. But yeah, so that is out of the box working for you without having to do many tweaks. Because on the Florida one, you still kind of have to go to a text field, and a text field is fine for some things, but it's easy to forget, especially if you are trying to modify it for your own camp website. That'd be the one thing you forget. But now let's take a look at a couple of other things. Look at this button here, Add Sponsor. That we hadn't seen it before because the Florida one doesn't have this button. On the Florida one, you have this little button, and then we can see that here. Let me go back to the site. If we go down to the bottom, oh, I think I'm loading the same website now. Ah, yeah, this is the Florida one. So if we go down to the side, there's nothing there. And I mean, it's arguably not necessarily too much work to have that, but what that does is it just throws you into a node. It brings out the canvas, so you can actually add the sponsor right here if you wanted to, right on the page.
Nice.
Um, which, it saves you like an extra click, and having to go to the content page. So there's that. And if we look at the schedule for this one, it's slightly different. And right now it's not showing anything because we unassigned those sessions. But once we assign them, they will show up down here. And let's do that. Oh. Actually, we might have messed it up a little bit because we unassigned the sessions and we changed the camp dates. So let me change it from here and see if we can get this back in sync. So change that. We did 226 and then we go into generate scheduler. Let me drag that one here and drag that one there and this one here. And then if we went here and refresh, there we go. Then we have some of them showing up. So it doesn't show up in the same way that Florida has because this one does it slightly different and you can see that in the URL. This does a URL by date instead of like day one and day two. Nothing wrong with this approach and nothing wrong with the other approach. And this one has like different filters. Like you can filter by beginner, intermediate. The Florida one doesn't take advantage of the filters as of yet. They might in the future. Now, it is missing a little bit of the fanfare that the Florida one offers. Like if you went over here, you can see that the Florida one looks a bit more polished. And that's because they have this on the top and they are just
Mm,
handling the display slightly differently. And then they just add a little bit of extra content down here. So that's
yeah,
one way of knowing and that those two are not the same. But that doesn't stop you from potentially being able to have more of this behavior inside of this one. It's just the out of the box experience of the Florida one because it works slightly different. I fine-tuned this one to look a little better, but I still wanted to remain within kind of like the boundaries of what it provides. But there's nothing stopping anybody from having like a closer experience to this on this one.
yeah.
Now you do have the users down here, and this I tweaked some of the templates for the user to show up. But if you went to a page that has a user, you can see that there's nothing there, but that's only because it's missing different fields that are needed for that. But in this one, like Lee has like his little thumbnail picture, but it doesn't have the title or it doesn't have the name or anything. And that's just because the event platform doesn't deal with that. So it's not necessarily a
Mm,
fault of Florida and the event platform itself. It's just that the two of them together are not a full site like the Florida is, just because the Florida is what they actually use in production, and the events platform is
yeah.
more of a system for you to build on top of that. Yeah, there's actually an initiative to make it a project, and if it becomes a project, it probably could be a theme up a little more, but it also needs a little bit of thought on like if there's gonna be like an extra module from the events platform to provide some of those user fields, and why not? Because if they did, then you wouldn't have some of those challenges, and it could adopt the same thing as Florida or any other theme could adopt it. Because if you see here, there's a feature speaker, there's a job listing. I didn't create this content tab. These content tabs came in from the modules that the event platform provided. It's just the event platform provides
Really?
so much.
Okay.
So if you were to install a standard Drupal profile with Olivero or whatever, all these content types come in. And if you look inside of them, they are very similar to what we saw on the Florida side because they were inspired by it. So that is what actually is being borrowed from Florida. Not necessarily some of their features, but like, um, let's go to sessions. Same kind of layout, like it's training, it's
Yeah.
not a session, not a training. And that will be regardless of what theme it is. So right now it's having a Florida Drupal a flavor, but it could be with any contributed theme out there, and they
Yeah.
just have that take. But even if people were to start with the events platform with this one and they just wanted to tweak it, I mean the tweaks that are left to actually style are minimum. I mean you wouldn't necessarily need Hershey for that. You would just need somebody to spend a couple of afternoons. I could probably have made the thing look exactly the same, but they probably want to change it anyway. So it was a kind of like a diminishing return type of proposition because at that point when you have 80%, it's like you
Yeah.
can live with that.
Good job on this, dude.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
And
Really good job.
Job listings have a button as well for listing a job, similar to what we saw with the sponsor. This is a thing that just comes from the event platform. It's not really a Florida thing. It's just them just calling their own canvas for that content type. And then like the becoming a sponsor, I think actually might have come from the Florida one. But these type of buttons are spread all over the place to make it easy to just make it
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
Cool. That's pretty much it. Hopefully,
Yeah.
we had enough content in there.